What is up, guys? Mcdoubles back again with a brand new video, and today we're going to go over the October updates for Project Ascension, and they are massive, okay? Pretty sick new stuff, new Legendary Random Enchants, new Epic Enchants, new capstones, a bunch of awesome notable changes that we'll point out. Please keep in mind this is just an overview of the patch, highlighting all of the major changes from it, so if you want to see every little thing that was changed, please click the link in the description below, and it'll take you straight to the patch notes. And you can also kind of pick and choose what you want to look at in the description below. I'll have timestamps for everything. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's jump right in. Okay guys, let's go ahead and start off with new Legendary Random Enchants. We have Dragon Warrior right off the bat, and it's just absolutely crazy, although admittedly, you're going to see it's actually going to be very hard to make a Dragon Warrior build. And that is because to play Dragon Warrior, you're going to need Death Wish, and you're going to need Intercept, as well as Bloodthirst and Slam. So, 4 abilities. 2 are really easy to get with Bloodthirst and Slam. 2 incredibly, damn near impossible to get if you need both, right? And that is the Dragon Roar and the Intercept. Both are epic cards. But let me go ahead and tell you what this does. It transforms your Death Wish into no longer a 15% physical damage buff with a 5% damage taken debuff. Instead, you're going to have Dragon Roar. This is a Cataclysm era ability with its own Project Ascension flavor, right? It slows nearby targets and also deals armor-piercing damage. Okay, that's good right off the bat for a Bloodthirst build because they're always trying to pierce your armor, but it also increases all physical damage you do by 15% for 10 seconds. Now, when you Bloodthirst or execute, your next slam becomes instant cast and does additional damage based on the strength of your weapon. That's pretty interesting. Now, these empowered slams also reduce the cooldown of Dragon Roar by 5 seconds and increases the damage of your Dragon Roar by 25%, stacking up to 3 times. That means you could potentially increase the damage of Dragon Roar by 75%. And if you reach 3 stacks, your Dragon Roar stuns nearby enemies for 2 whole seconds. That's really strong. Now, that's not even the end of it, because if you have Intercept, you also get a new ability. It doesn't say it replaces it, although instead you get another ability alongside it called Dragon Charge. This is a speed boost, actually. It's a very weird kind of something you would see from Koa. The Koa Guardian has something similar to this. It propels you forward at 100% increased speed, makes you immune to movement impairing effects for up to 2 seconds, or until you impact with an enemy, and upon impact, you deal fire damage in front of you. Now, listen, I am a little disappointed that Dragon's Breath has nothing to do with being a Dragon Warrior. I almost wish on 3 stacks your Dragon Roar was just Dragon's Breath. It casted Dragon's Breath, right? Instead of stunning for 2 seconds. The stun might be better, actually, so that's interesting. But yeah, it's an actual badass, brand new melee slam build. Instant cast slams. And the way you're going to want to play this is single-minded fury, get the Death Wish, obviously, get the Intercept, the Bloodthirst. You don't really need the Execute, and then get the Slam. Then the way that you want to play is getting Mortal Strike, going single-minded Fury, and you know what? You'll just be completely broken. Okay, next up, another awesome Legendary Random Enchant that just came out. Prayer of Preservation. This is really sick, and this makes me want to play a healer, because I think finally we're getting into an era where Project Ascension is no longer just going to give the really creative, innovative ability ideas to the DPS class, right? To the DPS role. Instead, they're going to be giving it a little bit more to the tanks, which they've already started, but now the healers, which they've really barely dipped their toes into until now. I mean, there's a few interesting healer random enchants, but for the most part, to me, they're still from a different era of Ascension in terms of simplicity, lack of creativeness compared to the DPS and some of the newer tank ones. But Prayer of Preservation is a really badass one because we're finally getting another transform Legendary Enchant, something that completely warps an ability into something brand new, and we're getting it for an ability that is, as far as I was aware, pretty weak on the overall, and that is Prayer of Healing. So Prayer of Preservation transforms your Prayer of Healing into a new channeled healing spell that, when placed, so you have presumably like a circle that you place and then you begin channeling, it will reduce the damage all allies inside the effect take from area of effect attacks by 30%. That's actually weird. So it could be good in raid fights, potentially. It could be good whenever a boss has an AoE effect, which is something you do see often, I think, on bosses, right? Cleave effects are a very normal thing to slap on a boss and then, you know, prevent people from grouping, for example, or something, right? There's a lot of AoE. But more importantly, perhaps, it also heals up to 5 low health allies every second, presumably for a lot. And the heal also scales with modifiers to Prayer of Healing. So there's a bunch of really cool Epic Enchants, for example, and just other talents that you can use that are going to make this even stronger. But it's not even done, because the final heal is extra powerful and grants a buff to its targets, giving your next direct heal on that target 20% increased critical effect chance. So you could go many different ways with this. You could go nature, you could go holy, you could go for the massive healing touch crit. That's something that could be cool because you, for once, are not having to go all in on just one type of magic with healing, like just holy or just nature. You could go holy nature, and that's interesting. So 20% increased critical effect chance. I really like that. However, it also makes it trigger an additional heal and reduces the cooldown of your prayer preservation by 3 seconds. So overall, this is really sick. I have some cool ideas for this, and don't be surprised if you see me play this sometime in the future. Okay, next we have a brand new Legendary Random Enchant for lightning builds called Stormborn, okay? This is interesting. There's a bunch now for lightning builds. Elemental Mastery is what you're going to need for this, and it increases your melee haste when you use it now by 15%. So this is a hybrid enchant right now, which is honestly not something you see as often as the caster version, so that's cool. Elemental Mastery is now going to be giving you spell haste and melee haste. Interesting. Okay, but it also cuts the cooldown of your Storm Strike in half. That's really interesting. You can spam the Storm Strike more often. Now, when Elemental Mastery or Shamanistic Rage apparently are active, your Storm Strike deals additional nature damage to all enemies in front of you. That's really cool. Storm Strike becomes AoE. In addition, the damage of your Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning spell is increased by 20% of your attack power, and your Lightning Shield orbs by 10% of your attack power. It's the perfect synergy for a Lightning hybrid build. That's incredible. This was one of the builds I mentioned in my best melee build video under the hybrid section, but at the time we didn't have a dedicated Legendary Enchant. Now it does. So if you liked Lightning Hybrid, but you were just disappointed by it not having a truly good, dedicated Legendary Enchant, there you go. On that same vein, we have a rework to an old Legendary Random Enchant from the old days when they first became a thing, and that is Stormbringer, which now says your damaging abilities have a chance to strike your target's location with lightning, dealing additional nature damage to the target and leaving an electrified area, slowing enemies by 50%. It also deals damage every second for 4 seconds. This is very similar to Crackling Thunder, but that can only be procced with the Thunderclap. This does more damage, presumably, and now no longer slows just one target, although before it dazed them. That's pretty significant. It's slightly different than just slowing your target. The point is now it's a flat 50% slow, but it also is AoE in that same field, so that's really good. Okay, let's look at the melee changes now. First and foremost, everything is focused on upping the AoE damage, and that's really sick. They're going to be doing something that actually hits one of my builds, Titanic Mutilate, because they're going to be changing Whirlwind. So this is actually a really good update for me. So first of all, Divine Storm can hit up to 6 targets, changed from 3. Whirlwind can hit up to 6 targets now, changed from 4. I'm going to hit like 10 targets, I think, plus with that enchant I have with Titanic Mutilate. Blade Storm can hit up to 6 targets, changed from 4. Swipe for Cat Form, 40 energy, down from 50. That's incredible. Feral Instinct Capstone now also reduces the cooldown of Tiger's Fury, and Berserk now allows your Mangle for Cat Form to hit up to 3 targets and no longer prevents usage of Tiger's Fury, but is no longer usable while feared. So huge nerf if you think about it, if you cannot use Berserk while feared, because it broke the fear, I believe. So you'll still be immune to it, I believe, but you just can't use it while you're feared. But Mangle Cat Form is now doing what Mangle Bear Form does, which is hitting multiple targets, 3 specifically. and you can use Tiger's Fury during it now, which is just absolutely awesome for boosting your energy and getting off even more AoE burst. It's just sick. It's going to add a lot of damage to cat players, and it's going to make them very happy, but there's this little bit of a nerf in there too, right? Okay, now we have melee epic REs. We have Massacre, Blade Vortex, and Sweeping Swings, and essentially what this does is tries to add more AoE potential to melee builds, and that's going to be good because it's going to help melee builds compete in Mythic Plus and raids, which, you know, that is one thing I noticed about, let's say, my Titanic Mutilate build that is just a little lackluster, is my AoE. I was getting blown out of the water by, like, let's say, Chain Lightning builds. Although I will admit, not all melee builds suffer in this regard, but still, this is a pretty big update. Killing Spree now damages 3 nearby targets and gives you a stacking buff to up to 15% additional damage. It's a 5-stack too, so very, very easy. And if you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, you reduce the cooldown of Killing Spree by 10 seconds. Blade Vortex makes your Blade Flurry even better. It's going to make it to where your active melee finishing moves have a 100% chance, because you're going to use it with 5 combo points, to trigger a Blade Vortex on the target location. This is going to be really cool, right? You're going to basically put a physical damage AoE on the floor where you popped, let's say, Eviscerate or Slice and Dice, and it's going to do damage every second for 3 seconds. In addition, your one-handed melee auto attacks will reduce the cooldown of Blade Flurry by 2 whole seconds. You're going to be dual wielding with this, and so you're going to be getting off a lot of melee auto attacks, and it's just going to be massively, massively good for keeping Blade Flurry up as much as you possibly can. Sweeping Swings then goes to Sweeping Strikes, and it transforms it, which we love, into Sweeping Swings. Now, while active, your physical damage is reduced by 20%, but it doesn't really matter because you would only use this on multi-targets, so your auto attacks strike up to 3 additional nearby enemies for 40% weapon damage, so an extra 3 more. Now, this is increased further by your attack power, which you'll be stacking anyway. The ability costs no rage and lasts 15 seconds with a 20-second cooldown, so that's very weird. It cannot be used with Blade Flurry. This is just another way for, let's say, Rando P, Slam builds, which we just talked about, a new one, right? Any melee build, right, that was utilizing Sweeping Strikes to get extra damage to now do even more, only in massive multi-target scenarios. This is for a mass pull, right? Like, you wouldn't use this on your typical 3 to 4, 5 mob pull. You use it on 6 to get the full AoE. Maybe use it on 5, but you definitely use it on 6 to get the full effect, right? Okay, now some caster changes, right? So we're going to increase the base damage values of direct damage and damage over time immolate by 6%. So we have an immolate buff. That means we also have a Chaos Bolt buff. Eternal Water now also makes your Water Elemental's Water Bolt spell increase your spell haste by 1% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. Absolutely fantastic for Frost builds. Actually incredible, in fact, because you already have so much haste, and so now you're just going to be chunking incredibly fast Frost Bolts with a really, really strong slow on it at everybody. It's just going to be cancer for Battlegrounds. The buff from Evoker now increases your critical strike chance with Fireball and Arcane Missiles by 3% per stack instead of 2%. So a buff to Evoker, just awesome. I love this build. I have to play it again. Combustion now has a 90-second cooldown, changed from 120, so a buff to Fire Mage. It also increases critical strike damage bonus by 75%, changed from 50. So, hey, just straight up more damage for fire builds. Okay, Controlled Blast now reduces the cooldown of Blast Wave by 15 seconds, changed from 10. Increases the spell power scaling of Temporal Blast by 5%. I believe that's Arcane. And then Shooting Stars now also increases your spell critical strike chance by 5%, while Starfall, which you do not see often, is active. Okay, we also have some new Epic Enchants that have to do with, you know, honestly, some spells that I didn't know why they were in the game, other than they're cool, but in their actual iteration, I didn't understand why they were in the game. So now that they're creating new versions of them, I'm pretty happy. And the one I'm talking about specifically is Chaos Meteor. This transforms your Inferno spell. Remember the one that, you know, creates an Infernal out of the sky? And it turns it into Chaos Meteor. This calls down a meteor which lands on the target location after 2 seconds, dealing fire damage and disorienting enemies for 3 seconds. It has a disorient on it. That's like a dragon's breath, man. This ability scales with Chaos Bolt, dude. Oh my god! And its cooldown gets reduced by 1 second from the Emberstone capstone. Jesus! Ooh, this is interesting. Illuminated Judgment, your infusion of light, which is something that you would typically proc with Holy Shock to get off a Holy Light or a Flash Heal, or a Flash of Light rather, because that would be synergistic with the talent. Now we'll actually empower Judgment as well to do 100% increased damage, but gives it a 1-second cast time. It requires the final rank of Infusion of Light. So you have yet another holy cast spell aimed at doing massive damage. The Judgment will proc a seal. I mean, we're talking some very fascinating paladin builds that just keep getting iterated on, patch after patch. And another really cool one, by the way, that I skimmed over, Deconstruction. This transforms your Devastate, which, if you recall, is a Prot Warrior ability that does like 120% weapon damage and applies a stack of Sunder armor, will now turn into a new ability called Deconstruct, which deals arcane damage based on your weapon damage. So Arcane Hybrid and perhaps a Battle Mage Arcane build has more support. So this is very similar to the Sunder Soul one that gives you basically a Shadow Hybrid option. Now we have an Arcane version of that. So this is great for Battle Mage though, which procs a Arcane Barrage. So really excited to see if somebody can do that. Maybe I'll try that. It also applies Sunder Armor with Deconstruct, but this again, version of Deconstruct or version of Devastate is going to scale with modifiers to Devastate, and it increases its damage based on your spell damage. So a little bit all over the place there. Nothing says you have to do an Arcane Hybrid with this. This can actually be used with many different hybrids. Whenever you've got that instant spell that you're ready to throw out, whether it's a Frostbolt or a Lightning Bolt, now it's going to do additional damage because you're getting all that extra spell damage based on those Sunder Armor procs. And you know what? It's still going to hit hard because you're double dipping and you've already got so much spell damage from taking Mental Quickness. So this is going to be really cool. I don't exactly know how to use it. I threw out some ideas, but you know, somebody's going to come up with something that's going to make this cool and good to use. Okay, and some quick changes to Rangers, just mostly straight buffs across the board and no nerf to Explosive Shot, which some of you guys might be very surprised by. But Multi-Shot now deals 130% up from 120% weapon damage. Steady Shot 125% up from 115. Compound Shot, which is the one that uses combo points, so it's your combo point range build, now deals increased damage going all the way up to 190% weapon damage instead of 170%. Master Marksman now increases the crit of ranged attacks by 2% up from 1%, but no longer affects melee critical strike chance. I actually think that's really, really good. The critical strike chance for melee wasn't really making any sense with Master Marksman. It was just there because, you know, there are some melee hunter abilities. So now we get more crit with just ranged attacks. Marked for Death now also increases the critical strike damage bonus of Multi-Shot. That's cool. Expunge's Cobra Venom will now explode if the target dies before reaching 3 stacks. So its explosion damage is now increased by 20% of your spell power. That's just incredible. You know, if you're using Secret of the Farstriders and you're using Chimera Shot, you're going to be happy. So Wild Wrath allows Wrath that is casted through its effect to also restore 12% of your base mana, so fixing some mana problems. They even say at the bottom here that they're doing these last two specifically to help Locust Ranger in the AoE department because, as you can see, everybody's getting their AoE buffed. So they didn't actually seemingly want to nerf some of these really strong AoE builds. Like Explosive Shot is literally topping meters and it's just Explosive Shot, you know, in every AoE pool, I mean. And so now they're like, okay, maybe we shouldn't nerf it. Maybe we should buff other things. Hey, you don't see that often. I'll take it. Pretty good range changes. Okay, tanks. So first and foremost, there's just a bunch of just buffs across the board, but they do a few notable things that I'll point out. So first of all, toughness in the Protection Warrior tree, which was just the quintessential give more armor talent for Prot Warriors, is now actually going to be completely changed. They're renaming it to Firm Grip, and instead of giving armor, it now increases the armor contribution from your shield specifically by up to 30%. They also nerfed Redoubt, by the way. That's actually a pretty major nerf across the board as well. I mean, they nerfed it all the way by half. That's, you know, only 10% block value instead of 20% block value. So I guess a lot of these buffs are actually as a direct result of this nerf, at least in part. Oh, a new capstone, Tenacity. So with the final rank of Tenacity, your armor is increased by an amount equal to your strength. That's going to be very good for parry tank. Looks like some bear form buffs as well. increased damage for swipe, increases your damage when you're enraged, and Taste for Blood, when you're using Carnage Incarnate, will now make your swipe generate additional threat, on top of everything else it does. Another Capstone, Brutal Impact, using Bash on a monster that is permanently immune to stuns, causes you to do damage to them, increased by your AP. And then lastly, Bash and Thrash, new Epic Enchant. When you interrupt a spell cast with Bash, its cooldown is reduced to 14 seconds, and your Mangle will hit an additional 2 nearby targets for 6 seconds. In addition, using Bash triggers your Enrage for 6 seconds, and this ignores the cooldown of Enrage, and these effects cannot trigger against players. So pretty cool stuff all around for the tanks, but a little bit of a nerf there as well with Redoubt. Okay, so for healers, right off the bat, we're seeing buffs to Shaman healing spells, with a buff to Healing Wave, Chain Heal, and Lesser Healing Wave by small amounts, around 2%. Flash Heal as well, up by 3%. Tidecaller now increases the healing the target takes from your periodic nature spells by 20% per stack, up from 15. Tidecaller's boon will no longer be removed with immunities like Divine Shield. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Low Tide, which is more Shaman stuff, we're seeing a lot of that, now increases the critical effect chance of Healing Wave on targets affected by Riptide by 20%, up from 10. That's big. Revitalize, which gives you mana and stuff back, now also triggers from the direct heal of Regrowth, 100% chance if you get the full talent. Capstone, new Capstone, improved Flash Heal. Your Flash Heal cast reduces the cooldown of Inner Focus by 2 seconds. That might be good, especially for PvP. Another Epic Enchant, Ever Living, healing an ally with any direct or periodic nature heal while your Swift Mend is ready to use, reduces the cooldown of your Swift Mend by 1 second. This stacks up to 15 times. That's really, really big. When fully stacked, your Swift Mend does not consume rejuvenation or regrowth when used. That's a buff to Druid spells. We also have another buff to Druid. Overflow now heals the lowest percentage health ally within 8 yards for 20% of your healing touch, changed from healing a random target for 30%. So that's way better. It's more consistent. You know who it's going to go on. It's not going to overheal. That's awesome. Okay, we also have some quick buffs to Lightning Hybrids. Stormhammer, so that's the tank stance, the hybrid lightning tank that is desperately in need of love, now has an 8-second duration, up from 6 seconds, and dealing damage with Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning while Stormhammer is active will now reduce the cooldown of Concussion Blow Stormhammer by 8 seconds, up from 5 seconds. In other words, you're going to be able to get way more Stormhammers off, which is going to be quite good. On top of that, Thundering Blow now deals 15% extra damage as nature, up from 10%, so a shockwave buff. Thunderclap no longer having a stance requirement is massive. Now you don't have to have defensive stance, right? So you can just go Thunderclap and Righteous Fury. That's all you really need. That's just great. And they fixed a couple issues. Voodoo Power Random Enchant that makes Stormstrike do damage based on your spell power. Now that works. Thunderstruck is now working perfectly as well with Thunderclap, so that's good. Now, we have a new Epic Enchant as well. Thunder and Lightning. Your Lightning Shield Orbs increase the damage of your Thunderclap by 3% per active orb. Wow. Dealing damage with Lightning Shield reduces the cooldown of your Thunderclap by 2 seconds. There you go. They just did it. You can be a lightning tank now. It's fully supported. You're good. It works. Do it. Okay? Go be the Mountain King. Okay, and some quick buffs to the old original LREs, PROC Mystic Enchant buffs. So just straight up, all you need to know about this is all the things like Harbinger of Flame, Amalthazad's Curse, Unbounded Spellsinger, the Deathbringer Mystic Enchant, the Unbounded Deathbringer Enchant, and Stormbringer. All of them now have been changed in some way. We already went over Stormbringer, but all of the other ones are simply going to heal you for a little bit less, but do a little bit more damage, 50% more. So theoretically, it might just be about the same amount of healing, actually, but just straight up more damage. So it's a straight buff to all of those old enchants, just to bring them up in power level so you could actually choose them if you wanted burstier options over the typical legendary enchants that we see on builds. We've also got some talent changes. Looks like nerfs across the board. Blink now has a 45-second cooldown, changed from 40, so it is an overall nerf. Spell Lock from the Fell Hunter pet now has a 60-second cooldown. It's an interrupt. It changed from 40. That's big. Okay, 20 seconds is big. Devour Magic, which is the Purge effect, has a 40-second cooldown, changed from 20. Improved Fell Hunter, so huge nerf to Fell Hunter. Improved Fell Hunter is now a 3-point talent. Wow. It now reduces the cooldown of Spell Lock and Devour Magic by 7, 14, 20 seconds. Okay, that's interesting. Slow now reduces casting speed by 15%, changed from 30. Arcane instability now increases the casting speed reduction effect of your slow by 15%. Ghost Wolf now reduces damage taken by 15%, and it was taken away from the talent, so it's just baseline now. That's pretty big. Hand of Protection now makes you immune to interrupt and silence. Oh, it already makes you immune to melee, so that's huge. And it also has a lower cooldown now, a 3-minute cooldown, changed from 5, and of course it shares a 30-second cooldown with Divine Shield and Ice Block now. Improved Travel Form is a 3-point talent, changed from 5. That's good. 5 was ridiculous, so that's a buff. Psychic Horror now disarms the target for 4 seconds. Grip of Horror, which is the new Epic Enchant, now increases the duration of Psychic Horror's disarm by 3 seconds, and its capstone is Psychic Horror's disarm effect also reduces all damage dealt by the target by 20%, so that's amazing. Okay, they also made it to where resistance just straight up scales better and fixed it a bit so that it was a little bit more appropriate at max as well. So they say specifically resistance now has more appropriate level scaling, making it more valuable at low levels, but requiring higher resistance to reach the 75% cap at max. We've also got a skill card exchange quality overhaul. This is massive. Essentially, in the old days, you would exchange 5 of your skill cards that sucked for 1 sealed card, and it really hurts. Now, if that sealed card that you don't want happens to be rare or epic, now you'll get more cards. And so you can actually, technically, if you're lucky enough, although it's probably too rare to matter, have an infinite loop with this. But unfortunately, I would say that's probably never going to happen because unfortunately the epics are too rare right now. They went a little overboard with it. Like, you can guarantee you're going to get a legendary before you can ever guarantee you're going to get the epics you need. So, you know, it's a step in the right direction. It's massive. I love it. This is a great change, but I still think they should lower the rarity a bit of epics. Okay, and a buff, you could say, for serious PvP arena players where they get a new tabard now that's going to give them a special effect when they kill a player, let's say in a BG or in the open world. You need 2200 rating to get it, and they're all going to have these unique visual effects, so that's going to be pretty cool for those players. Now, they're also adding Dark Moon tickets to the game, which are going to be things that you get for exchanging your cards now from Silas, and they haven't added anything for them yet, but they're teasing us here, saying, hey, you're going to be able to spend those tickets on something good. I have a feeling that might actually be the skill card of your choice. I actually think that might be what it is. Now, if they get the price wrong, and they do have, I'm not trying to be mean, but they do have a habit of making the prices inaccessible for casual players, and even regular Joes, normal humans that play maybe as much as 4 or 5 hours every day, right? Like, it can be difficult to get the things that you need right now when it's grindy or grind worthy. And now this is grind worthy potentially, but I still think it should be like maybe, you know, like 50 cards for a rare, maybe 75 cards for an epic. That's just what I think personally. Maybe 100 cards for an epic, but I don't want to see it in the, you know, the mid hundreds or even the thousands, because then they're approaching retail level of design where they just make you, it's like allied races, right? It's like they make you grind on something you don't want to even have fun on, you don't want to play, and therefore it sucks the fun out of it for you because you have fun playing a actual character you want to play, and that character you want to be a certain race, and now you're barred from that. You have to do boring crap basically to get to the fun stuff. Nobody wants that. But if it was like, you know, maybe you level up once and prestige once, and then by then you've, you know, bought enough cards to where you finally have enough to get the ability you want, that's a great pace. Then you could prestige 2 more times and you can get another. And by the time you've fully gotten the prestigious title, you could build 1 full character. You know, if that was the case, you would essentially have to prestige a character fully, all the way to, you know, the max prestige and get the I think it's 10, right? So just say 10 times before you'd have enough perfect cards guaranteed on average, let's say. That's, I think, very fair, and then it would give people, you know, a chance, I think, to make a build they want to play. Okay, enough ranting. Let's move on. It is crazy, though. Okay, so now we have prestige dailies. This is really, really interesting. You can go ahead and grab a quest, right, when you prestige, and it changes every single day. You have an open world version, a battlegrounds version, and a dungeons version. Depending on the one you get a reward for prestiging and doing what the quest tells you to do. In this case, it could be doing 5 battlegrounds, completing, I think, 5 dungeons, or, you know, doing a certain amount of quests in the open world, whatever it may be. That's really, really freaking cool. And you get 100 prestige tokens as well, so that gives you another way to get those tokens if you want the transmog. Otherwise, it was pretty difficult unless you really grinded the prestiges out. But it looks like they're completely playing around the prestige system now with all of their updates. They're trying to make it more integral. And I think my changes to cards is going to send people in a prestige loop. I think they're going to think, oh, okay, so I get a cool title, and as a reward for that, I can build anything I want in the game, guaranteed skill card wise. A lot of people would say, yeah, I could do that, but you earned it, right? And it's not 3 weeks. It's not, you know, it doesn't feel so long that you don't even want to start. So I love this, you know. Okay, so I believe that is finally everything. This ended up being a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. A lot of changes, really a lot, and I hope you guys enjoyed this, right? This was actually a sick-ass patch, and I'm going to be playing more Project Ascension in the near future because I needed some kind of reinvigoration, and this is it, man. Every time a new LRE comes out, that is when the fun begins in my mind because of theory crafting and seeing new visuals and just, you know, just seeing what you can do, and that's awesome. So expect some new builds in the future, but I hope you guys enjoyed this update video. Like the video if you want to see more in the future, and just as a quick plug, if you haven't checked out my new world series, I made some mistakes with like video titles and stuff, so check that out if you haven't already. You might have actually liked it. But anyway, guys, I'll see you in the next video, and Mcdoubles out.
Ready for